Riley.
Ryan Benham?
Nope, Riley Joslin.
Seriously?
Okay, here's a little, this is a tricky one. This question right here, before we get into any type of the lesson, I want you to write this down. Let's think about this. One day, write this down. You catch 100 fish at random.
Like, how do you randomly catch 100 fish?
You know, like you do. You just walk in there and catch 100 fish.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah, that's how I do it.
From a lake.
What kind of fish?
Little minnows. You walk in there with huge cargo shorts, you know, and it's got all these pockets. And when you walk out, you got 100 fish in there. You tag the fish and release.
That would take forever.
Back into the lake.
And how much time does this take?
How did you catch this?
Tag your
They got these like little special
little radio transmitters. The next day,
No, how long does this take?
I don't know,
That's
doesn't say.
100 fish.
The next day,
So,
you catch 100 fish.
Why would they radio transmitters on minutes?
And find that, let's see,
46.
3 of them
Dang it.
are tagged. No, it's a problem out of the book. What can you conclude about the fish population?
There are tons of fish.
So it's extremely difficult to go into a lake and count all of the fish in a lake. That would be dang near impossible. This might help us estimate pretty closely the number of fish in the lake. So now this is where you guys think. Instead of turning the brains off, searching Instagram and whatever dumb things you guys do on your phones. Okay, no. That's a waste of time. Time is way too important to look at what other people are doing on Instagram. But relating to this, what can you conclude about the population of fish? You catch 100 fish, you tag them, you put them back in there. The next day you catch 100 more, only 3 of them are tagged. What do you think? What do you think?
Didn't you conclude that you like tagged about 3% of the population?
Keep going. Where would we go from there?
Wait, got it. You survey them. Survey the fish.
You could ask the fish.
Ask the fish.
Yeah.
How many of them are you in there?
Yeah.
It would be like on Finding Nemo. They would get into this big school of fish and blah 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 blah.
Are they already?
Come on, you're. It's not a bad idea. I mean, what percent of the fish were tagged that you caught on the second day? If we can build off that, I mean, somehow we've got to make a conclusion about the fish population. We have to have a concrete number, like there's 500 fish, or there's 1,000 fish, or something like that. Say again.
Like, he caught 197 fish that he caught once because of free time, where he only caught once.
Okay, say that louder. How many fish did he catch?
Yeah, no, 197.
He caught 100 the first day, 100 the second day, so people would think, well, he caught 200 fish. But 3 of them he already had caught the first day, so how many different fish did he catch? 197. Okay. These are all good thoughts. Let's keep going. What can we conclude about the fish population? Well, let me ask you this. He just went in there and caught 100 fish at random. So if he repeated the process, for a week, what would we expect would be the normal outcome on any given day? If he only tagged the first 100 fish and then every other day he just caught fish and looked at the number of fish that were tagged?
Each day you get more fish that were tagged.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Would he get more, or would you expect for him to get about the same ratio of tagged fish to untagged fish every day? You think he'd get more?
Well, he keeps getting more tagged fish because if he's tagging them all.
Well, no, he just tagged them on the first day.
Oh. Okay.
So and then every subsequent day he's just catching them and observing and then releasing them. So wouldn't it be about the same ratio of tagged fish to untagged fish? Maybe one day it would be 5, maybe one day it would be none. But if he did that over 100 days on average, it would be about the same as this. Okay. You guys are having some great thoughts, but we need to get a concrete number out of this. How many fish are in the lake?
A lot.
We know there's at least how many? We know there's at least 197. Because he caught 197 distinct fish, but there would be significantly more than that. Because if there were only 197 total and he tagged 100 of them the first day, then the second day when he caught them, wouldn't there be way more tagged fish in there?
Yes.
So we know there's significantly more than 197. It's kind of a combination of both of these thoughts. 3% maybe were tagged. There were 197 distinct fish caught.
So that means that 97% you would get 98 fish.
Wait, say that again?
That 97% of the time that you catch a fish that has been tagged.
Okay, yeah, pretty much, yeah. Is it a trick question? No, it's not a trick question. Trust me. I eat at Carl's Jr. Trust me.
I'm not going to buy Carl.
But because you throw opinion, that's why we want to. You like their food, not their food.
I like their food. No thoughts? Are we stumped? So, Trevor, if you were to go fishing at this lake and you cast in your net, so to speak, how many fish would you expect to get that were tagged? Out of the 100, then that would be how many? So then, if you went fishing the next day, about how many fish would you expect? If you caught 100 fish, how many would you expect to be tagged? 3 out of 100? So how can we turn this into a fish population?
That's good, 97%. Is there like 300 fish?
Doesn't have to do with 97%. There's a few more than 300 fish. We'll come back to this at the end. After doing the lesson, maybe we'll have a better understanding of this. Just keep this in the back burner. So anyway, you guys all understand what a survey is, right? If I were to tell you go out there and do a survey, what would you do? You go ask people questions, right? You survey. Now, depending on your method of surveying, do you think your results might be more? Let's say that you 4 people went out there and performed a survey in different ways. Would all of your results be the same in terms of reliability of the data? You understand what I mean? There's different methods of surveying, and that's what the lesson is all about. Let's say, for example, you were going into the lunchroom and you wanted to ask people about what they thought about school lunch. Okay? If you just asked the first 100 people in line what they thought, if you took like every 20th person in line, if you asked only girls and if you asked only boys, would they have different types of data?
Yeah.
But they all performed the same survey, so to speak. What do you think about school lunch? But the way that they performed the survey would give them different type of data. You agree? So what we need to talk about is the different ways you can perform a sample or a survey and the reliability of those. You following? Okay, so let's go to sampling methods, is what it's called. You're going to have to write down some words and define them, sampling methods. These are different ways that you could sample a population. Okay, so, first word. A population is all the members of a set. For example, if we're talking about Westlake High School students, the set would be Westlake High School students. Okay? If you wanted to figure out how the students felt about school lunch, would it be very practical to go and ask every single student of the set how they felt about school lunch? No. No. So that's why you would want to take a sample. That's what a sample is. A sample is part of the population. So if you want to figure out how a population feels about something, then you can take a sample of the population. Okay? So here are the different types of samples. These are words you will have to know for the test. There's something called a convenience sample. And I'll write a definition here in just a second. Just write the word. There's a self-selected sample. Oh, come on. Hold on a second. There we go. Systematic sample. Random sample. Systematic sample. Okay. So these 4 people I described here a few minutes ago, if Alex walked in right at the beginning of lunch and interviewed the first 100 people he saw in line, that would be a convenience sample. Okay. If let's say Evie, you set up a table at lunch saying, hey, if you want to answer this sample, come up and answer these survey questions. That would be a self-selected sample because people who answer the questions actually have to go over there and take the survey themselves. You follow? A systematic sample would be in the line, the lunch line, you take every fourth person. Say, all right, I'm going to interview every fourth person. Okay? Random sample would be just walking around the lunchroom selecting people at random in both lunches, because you don't want to just take first lunch, right? You figure out all the people in second lunch. That would be like a random sample. Let's just do a quick definition so you have something written down. Selecting. So let's go back up to convenience samples. Selecting members who are conveniently available. Self-selected sample means members volunteer. A systematic sample means you order the members in some way. So you can put all the boys here, all the girls here, or all of the 10th graders, and then all of the 11th graders, and all the 12th graders. And you order the members in some way, and select at regular intervals. In a random sample, all members are equally likely to be chosen. Okay. For the test coming up, you have to know all four of these sampling methods and what they mean. You also have to know their pros and cons, when to use them in different situations. So here's a situation to consider. Problem one. A newspaper wants to find out what percent of the city favors a property tax increase. Ooh, boo, don't talk about increasing taxes. A property tax increase to support, well, wait a minute, there's a reason for it, to support local parks. Cities can't just build parks, they have to get money. Where does a city get its money? Taxes. They're thinking about using one of the following methods to gather the information. Okay? Method A. And you've got to decide which method they're describing. The editor invites readers to express their opinions on the website. This is one of their ideas, to get an idea of what percent of the population favors a tax increase. Method A would involve putting some kind of a thing in their newspaper saying, hey, we want to get your opinion right into the website. Okay. Method B. If they decide that's not a good method, then this is what they would do. A reporter would interview people as they left the city's largest park. That would be method B. Method C, they would hire a survey service to call every 50th person in a phone book for that city. These are their three options for gathering data. Well, let's talk about, first of all, what type of sample each one is. Let's go back up to sampling method A. An editor invites readers to express their opinions on the newspaper's website. That would be a self-select. All right, good. Write that down. Self-selected. We're not deciding right now whether it would be good or a bad way. Let's just decide what it is. Method B, a reporter would interview people as they left the city's largest park. That would be a convenience sample. Method C. This would be systematic, because in a phone book, usually how are people listed in a phone book? Alphabetical. And then from that list or that ordering, you're selecting at regular intervals. So this would be systematic. Okay. Oh, one thing. Where do we have room? Where do we have room? If you have room right here before we did problem 1, I want you to add one more word. A sample has bias. I know you've heard that word before, bias. What does it mean? If you're biased towards something. Okay. In favor of. So a sample has bias if a part of the population is under or overrepresented in the sample. So depending on how you perform your sample, you might have a very large bias in that sample. If that's the case, your data is not very reliable. Okay? And just so you are aware, a lot of surveying teams know that, and here's what you need to consider. If you're performing a survey and you are hoping to get a certain type of response, then you're going to just instinctively perform a sample that's going to be biased towards what you want to have happen. Does that make sense? And then you put on whatever that we took a sample survey, and then people think, hey, that must be random. When in reality, there's a huge bias in your sample. So what we need to figure out now is there bias? Which one of these has the least amount of bias? What do we think? Because the point of the survey is to get honest opinions on property tax increase to support local parks. So let's go to method A. The editor invites readers to express their opinions on the website. You guys have all been on websites. Are there more negative comments left regarding something, or more positive comments left regarding things? What do you guys think? Is there going to be any bias if they use method A to collect results?
No.
Not everyone reads the newspaper, because they want to get the percent of the whole entire population. So does everybody read the newspaper? No. And just think in your mind, if you're vehemently opposed to a tax increase and you read that newspaper, aren't you going to write in? If you don't really care one way or the other, are you going to write in? No. If you're in favor of the tax increase, you might write in, but the point is, if you're strictly opposed to it, you're probably going to be the ones writing in on this. So if you were to check the opinions on that website, wouldn't it seem like most everybody's opposed to it?
Yes.
But is that a true reflection of the entire city? Maybe not. Okay, so there's a lot of bias in here. What about part B, or method B? A reporter would interview people as they left the city's largest park. So there's some guy there saying, hey, would you favor a tax increase to support this park that you've just enjoyed? Do you think there would be a bias there? If they're at the park, then most likely they would be the ones that would support it. Are they getting a good sample of all the city population? No. So that would be just those that go. So that would be over-representing those that go as opposed to those that not go. So that would be a huge bias on that one. What about method C? Survey a service to every 50th person in the phone book. Might this have a bias? You don't really know who you're going to call. Is it guaranteed to be random that you're getting a good sampling of those who go to parks, those who don't, or men to women, or old people to young people? You know what I mean? Because depending on the demographic, you might get different answers. Is there guaranteed to have no bias with this? What if every 50th person in the phone book happens to be a young person that goes to the park? I mean, it could happen, right? Is it very likely? No, but could it happen? What if every 50th person is an unemployed person that has no money and doesn't want a tax increase? You see what I mean? So is there a chance for bias in that one? A little bit. But of the three, what would most likely be the least amount of bias? Probably the method C. It would introduce the least amount of bias. Okay. Get a book. Yes. Wait a minute, didn't you guys have this nice way of passing out books? Go to page whatever. I don't know what page it's on. Go to section 1.3 in your book. Page 22. Thank you. Sure can. We had this nice way of passing out books, you guys, and you destroyed it. That's true. Well, it was nice for these guys, too. They got a good arm workout. Deltoid workout. All right. On page 22, is there a problem? One got it. On page 23, is there a problem? One got it.
Yes.
Awesome. Read through the problem. One got it. You don't have to write it down, but I want you to read it. and answer it. Problem 1 got it on page 23. Just do the part A on the problem 1 got it. Do I not? Sometimes. Are you performing some kind of a survey? I eat at Beto's, but sometimes. Tacos. I don't eat there very much. Oh, no question. Carl's Jr. Alright, so you want to survey the eating habits of an entire community, but for some reason the interviewers go to the food court in the mall. Okay, what kind of sample would that be? Hungry people sample? No, what is it? A convenient sample? Okay, because all you gotta do is go there and there's people there. What's the chance of having a bias in that sample? What kind of people? Now, I don't want to generalize, but what kind of people are you likely to find at the food court in the mall? I just want you to answer this in your mind.
Well, people that are at the mall, like, usually, like, fancy people that shop at the mall.
What I'm getting at is that going to be a good representation of what the community's eating habits are? No. So this would have a big bias or no bias? Probably a pretty big bias. Okay? And, you know, Americans have, in other countries, Americans have the reputation of being obese.
Yeah, we're not the best country anymore.
But anytime, what I'm getting at is when they do these reports in other countries of Americans' eating habits, guess what they show? People eating at fast food restaurants. Is that what all of America does? No. But if you just took a sample of people eating at fast food restaurants, what is it going to look like? That's why the world has that opinion, is because we do have a fair share of fast food restaurants over here. But in those news reports, they're just showing people leaving a fast food restaurant. And yeah, there's going to be a few... Anyway, so you have to take that. I do eat my fair share of fast food, but
You say that to every teacher. He asks Miss Rallison every day if she's really cute. Like,
Allison? Should I arm wrestle her?
Yeah, she's freaking.
You think she could beat me?
Yeah.
Which one is Miss Rallison?
She's the one that, like, she has, like, long hair. She's very kind. Yeah.
I can't put a face to a name.
She weighs less than I do, probably.
She probably weighs as much as you weigh.
Yeah.
Well, you know the reason I got into weightlifting? When I was in 9th grade, I weighed like 115 pounds. I was tiny. I got beat by a girl in an arm wrestle in 9th grade. And I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed, I decided right then and there, I said, this is never going to happen to me again. Not ever!
I weighed 100 pounds in 5th grade.
So, I got into weightlifting. Anyway. No, but it wasn't really fair. This girl later eventually joined the football team. I mean, she was like a big girl. No. Yeah, she was strong. I mean, it wasn't even a contest. She just like pulled me right over. Well, I was. That's why I got into it. All right. Is there a practice A? Well, that was problem 1, got it. But isn't there an A practice problem? Okay, read that. read the A practice number 1 problem and decide what kind of sampling they're doing. Read the problem 1 practice problem. The A practice problem 1. Page 23, the A practice number 1. I mean, you guys, this is stuff you're going to have to answer on the test, so you need to be competent deciding between the sampling methods. So if you're in a supermarket and they want to find out the percent of shoppers who use coupons, if you go to the greeting card aisle and just interview everybody there, what kind of sampling method is it? It's another convenience sample.
Yeah, but that is
Okay. So, is there going to be a particular group of the population overrepresented in that sample? People buying greeting, old people maybe? So, big bias maybe?
Their children who have birthdays.
Okay. Yeah, you don't usually see a lot of coupons for greeting cards.
Why? They're like $1.
If you're searching around coupons for a greeting card. Okay, what about question 2? Practice A. A maintenance crew wants to estimate how many of the 3,000 air filters in a 30-story office building need replacing. The crew examines 5 filters chosen at random on each floor of the building.
So each floor they choose 5.
On each floor they choose 5. So, is that a convenience sample? Is that a self-selected sample? We've really got to think carefully, though. Is it a systematic, or is it a random?
I think it's kind of both, because it's random in the system.
Like it's right on each floor, but it's a
It's a
consistent
system
5.
that there's 5.
But it's not the same 5 filters on each floor of every bag.
I mean, I can tell you what the book says. You guys have great points. It does kind of seem like it's a mixture of random and systematic, doesn't it? But the definition of systematic was you put it in order and you choose at regular intervals, right? Aren't they put in order because it's stories of a building? So right there, they're put in order. And are you choosing at regular intervals? Kind of, because how many are you choosing on each floor?
5.
But you're not choosing like the first 5 on each, so I can see what you're saying. The book considers this a systematic sampling. Okay. You guys do have pretty good arguments on this could be random, but more importantly, what's the chance for bias? If you're choosing randomly 5 on each floor, is there going to be some part of it overrepresented or underrepresented?
So you'd only be checking 150 air vents out of 3,000.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but is that a good sampling of the building? If you're choosing 5 at random from each floor, is that a pretty good indication of the overall air filter quality of the whole building?
No.
I would say that's a pretty good sampling method right there. Okay. If you just checked all of the filters on floor 3,
Why not just be survey of them?
well, these are all surveys. They're just different types of surveys.
Oh.
Yeah. No, but guys, listen. I'm starting to lose you. If you just went to the 3rd floor and checked all the filters and they were all good, and you said, all right, the building must be good,
No.
is that a good way of doing it?
No.
Probably not. Probably not. Okay. Anyway, those are all the sampling methods. You guys good on that? Why don't you sign up for a second? Take a break. Let's keep it going. 2 more words you need to define. So we've talked about 4 types of sampling methods. You guys back with me? Okay, we've talked about sampling methods. Another way to gather data is called performing a study. Okay? You've actually, I think, already talked about this in a chemistry or biology class. Different types of studies. Matter of fact, guaranteed you've talked about something like this. There is something called an observational study.
Right?
Or a controlled experiment.
Okay. Just by raise of hands, in a science class, have you talked about a control group versus a not controlled group?
Yep.
You've talked about something like that?
Do I have to raise my hand?
I'm just curious if you've heard of something like that in a science class. Just raise your hand. Was it chemistry or biology or physics?
This type of science.
Okay. Let me start with that then. In a controlled experiment, you divide the sample into two groups. You impose treatment. I'm going to put that in quotations. On one group, but not on the control group. So let's say you're trying to observe the effects of some kind of a pharmaceutical drug. You divide a sample into two groups. One group, the control group, you don't give them to it, or you give them a placebo. Okay. The second group, you give them the drug and you see what effect it has. So you have a control group that has no change. Okay. And then you have the treatment group, which is being given the treatment. Does that make sense? I'm sure that's how they described it to you in your science classes. You what?
Rats are people that
No, it doesn't matter. Just members of a population. Could be people or
die.
bunnies or something.
I breed rabbits.
I'm sorry.
I breed rabbits.
In an observational study, you observe members in such a way that they are not affected. So in an observational study, you simply observe. You don't change anything. You don't affect anything. There's some theory out there. I can't remember whose theory it is, but they say simply by observing a system, you change the system. I don't know. Anyway. What page is the problem 2 got it on?
It's 24.
Page 24? I'm not going to write this down because there's a whole paragraph. But go to page 24. Go to page 24, read the problem 2, got it. Go. Problem 2, got it. Your eyes have to be looking at the paper if you're going to be reading this. Looking at the paper on page 24. Not at a phone. Not at your neighbor. Looking at page 24. The problem 2 got it, problem. Problem 2 got it. You don't need to write it down, just read it. Do you guys understand the word placebo? It's like a fake drug that makes people think they're getting the drug, but they actually aren't. So, no, it's just a pill that has nothing in it, pretty much.
It's a sugar pill.
Yeah, like a sugar pill. It's just the people think they're taking medicine, but they really aren't. Okay? The reason that they do this, the placebo, is they want everybody in both groups to think that they're getting the medicine, so they don't act differently, so they all act the same. Where in actuality, one group's not getting it, and they don't tell them. They just say, "You're getting this pill, you're getting that pill." They look the same. One pill actually has the medicine, one doesn't. Well, they don't do anything any different. I mean, they all think they're on the drug, and so they just all go about their daily whatever. Yeah. So, the company is asking for volunteers to test a new drug to treat high blood pressure. Half the volunteers will be given the drug, and half will be given a placebo. And they don't know who they are. They're just given a pill, and they don't know if it's the placebo or the drug. The researcher will monitor the blood pressure of each volunteer. Which type of study method is the researcher using? We did lesson 8.1. It'll be on the website. Yeah. Was it an AP test? How'd it go? Which one was it? Nice. Cool. Hey, we'll see you on Wednesday. You too. Okay, you guys. Which type of study is this? Is it an observational study or a controlled experiment? Come on. Controlled experiment. Right, Alex? You divided them into two groups. One group got the treatment, one did not. Should the sample statistics be used to make a general conclusion about the effectiveness of the drug in the larger population? What do you mean? Or what do you think?
Probably not, because it's only 2 people. Your sample size is only 2 people out of the population of how many?
Okay, hold on. Are you guys hearing this? Some of you aren't really engaged in the conversation. Put your technology away. You can have it gone for 5 minutes. Okay? Does it say anything in there about how the samples were selected, about how the population samples were selected?
Volunteers.
They were volunteers. Okay? So what we need to think of, we know it's a controlled experiment, but are the results that accurate? Okay? So if they're volunteers, we've got to kind of consider, is it a good sampling of an entire population, or is it a certain type of person that would volunteer for this? You know what I mean? Those are questions you got to think about. Poor college students, if they're getting paid. Yeah. If you could be guaranteed that the people volunteering were just at random, this might be a good, effective study. Here's what the book says as their answer. It was a controlled study. Isn't that what we said it was? And then they go on to say, if other factors of the volunteers are random, such as age, gender, and overall health, the results can be used to make a general conclusion. How do you guarantee that the volunteers are selected at random if they're volunteers? You understand what I mean? That's kind of an oxymoron. In order to make this truly random, you would have to select the people to be in this experiment rather than having them volunteer. Because you guys have all heard the commercials. Volunteer for this study of drug. What's the type of person that would volunteer for that? College students that need money. I don't know. Somebody sitting at home that doesn't have a job. You know, might not be the most random, but that's the stuff they have to deal with. Okay. Let's do one more. Last one, then we'll be done. Where's the practice 2? There's practice problems just underneath that, right? Oh, here it is. Practice 3 and practice 4. Read through practice 3 and practice 4 real quick. Practice 3 and practice 4. So question 3 specifically, it says identify the type of study. Is this an observational study? Is it a controlled experiment? Or is it a survey? So now we got to think about those 4 surveying methods. Is it a self-selected survey? Is it a random survey? What is it? A convenience sampling? What is this here? It's random. It's completely random. Okay, so the next question is explain whether the sample statistics should be used to make a general conclusion about the population. If they've selected students at random from a list and then ask those students about their, their chores, how much time they spend on chores each week, is that reliable data? They were randomly selected, right? So is it possible that they over or underrepresent some sample of the school? Probably not if they're selected at random. Okay. If you asked a bunch of lazy seniors how much time they spend doing chores, would that be a good statistic to use? No, because seniors are lazy. But you understand? Would you take this data for good data about how much time they spend on chores on average? I would, because there's very little chance of bias if they're selected at random. Okay. Question 4, a gardener tests new plant food by planting seeds from the same package in the same soil. Each plant is given the same amount of water, but half the plants are given food and the other half are given no food. What kind of study is that? It's what type of experiment? Controlled experiment. Okay. All right. That's it.